Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to those who will be listening to this later. Uh, my name's Tim, and I'm happy to share with you today about a tool that's been very helpful for me in my recovery journey. It's the faster scale, and it's given me significant insight into my undesired behaviors and clues to why my addiction felt out of control. When I started my recovery journey, I had a keen awareness of how the behaviors and how my addiction was impacting me and those around me, but I had very little insight into why it was that I couldn't get control of my addiction. Um, so this tool is part of the Genesis process, and this talk borrows heavily on that material. There's the workbook, the Genesis process for change, developed by Michael Guy. And he came up with the faster scale after prayerfully considering the question posed in Romans 7, which is, why do we repeat behaviors that are destructive and sinful? And so Romans 7, there's a few verses here. For what I am doing, I do not understand, for I'm not practicing what I would like to do, but I'm doing the very thing I hate. For the good that I want, I do not do, but I practice the very evil that I do not want. But if I am doing the very thing I do not want, I'm no longer the one doing it, but sin which dwells in me. Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, on the one hand, I myself with my mind am serving the law of God, but on the other, with my flesh, the law of sin. So in the faster scale tool, there's some concepts that are embedded in there. One is that our addictive and destructive behaviors are symptoms that are pointing to an underlying cause, one that we can uncover. Also, that relapse starts with a secret, with doing something that we shouldn't be doing. Also, if we eliminate craving, we eliminate relapse. To relapse, we must accomplish isolation, and we can predict and avoid relapse by paying attention to the changes that are taking place in us and in our life. The tool is designed to be used regularly to help us understand our unconscious habits and to be in control of our emotions. So the acronym we'll go through here, but before we go down the faster scale, which are the steps that we go from restoration to relapse, the first state or the desired state of living is restoration, which isn't part of the acronym, but that's accepting life on God's terms with trust, vulnerability, and gratitude. Some of the characteristics of that are we have no current secrets. We're working to resolve problems, identifying fears and feelings. We're keeping commitments to meetings, prayer, family, church, people, goals, and ourselves. We're being open and honest, making eye contact when we're speaking to others, reaching out to others. We're increasing in our relationships with God and others, and we're living in true accountability. The first step on the spiral down to relapse is forgetting priorities, which is when we start believing the present circumstances and moving away from trusting God. Also, denial, flight, uh, changes in what we think is important, and how we spend our time and what we're thinking about. The first thing is secrets, spending less time and energy for God, meetings in church, avoiding our support and accountability people, engaging in superficial conversations, bringing sarcasm into those, isolating, seeing changes in our goals and priorities, being obsessed with relationships, breaking promises and commitments, neglecting family, a preoccupation with material things, with television or computers and other entertainment, procrastination, lying, overconfidence, being bored, and hiding money. If we stay in there and then we move into anxiety, a growing background noise of undefined fear and getting energy from our emotions. This is characterized by worry, by the use of profanity, being fearful, being resentful, replaying old negative thoughts, perfectionism, judging others' motives of us or others' motives, making unrealistic goals and to-do lists, mind reading, fantasy, codependent rescuing, sleep problems, trouble concentrating, seeking drama, gossip, using over-the-counter medication for pain or sleep or weight control, and flirting. As we are in that mode, we start speeding up and we're trying to outrun the anxiety, which this stage is usually the first signs of depression. We're super busy and always in a hurry, finding good reasons to justify the busyness. Workaholic, can't relax. We're feeling slowed, avoiding slowing down. We're feeling driven. We can't turn off our thoughts, and binge eating, overspending, unable to identify our own feelings and needs. We've got repetitive negative thoughts and are irritable, maybe dramatic mood swings or consuming too much caffeine, nervousness, difficulty being alone and with people, difficulty listening to others and making excuses for having to do it all. Next, we go into ticked off, which gives us adrenaline and other crisis chemicals being high from anger and aggression. This is characterized by procrastination, which can be causing crises in money and work and relationships, increasing sarcasm, black and white thinking, feeling alone, feeling that no one understands, overreacting in situations, having road rage, constant resentments, pushing others away, increasing isolation, blaming, arguing, irrational thinking, unable to take criticism and being defensive. People start avoiding you. You feel you need to be right all the time. Digestive problems and headaches. We have obsessive stuck thoughts, unable to forgive, feelings of superiority, and using intimidation in our communications. Eventually, we fall down into exhaustion, which is the loss of our physical and emotional energy coming off the adrenaline highs. And this is where we start to move into depression, panicked, confused, hopelessness, sleeping too much or too little, unable to cope, feeling overwhelmed, crying for no reason, can't think, we're forgetful and pessimistic, feeling helpless and tired and numb, wanting to run, having constant cravings for our old coping behaviors, thinking of using sex or drugs or alcohol for relief, seeking old unhealthy places and people, really starting to isolate, having people angry with you, self-abusing or having suicidal thoughts, not having any goals, not returning phone calls, missing work, irritability, and no appetite. If something happens and we, at this stage, we're unable to cope with it, and we ultimately, we're very likely to fall back into the relapse, which is the return to the behaviors that are destructive, that we don't want to be doing, and it's returning to the place that you swore you'd never go to again, giving in and giving up, out of control, lost in your addiction, lying to yourself and others, feeling you can't manage without your coping behaviors. And the result of this is a reinforcement of shame, guilt, and condemnation, with feelings of abandonment and being alone. These are steps we go through unconsciously. We have predictable, repetitive patterns that are orchestrated by our limbic system in our brain, which is working to keep unwanted thoughts and feelings and memories out of our conscious awareness. When I was first exposed to this, I recognized that I had spent years of my life in anxiety and ticked off and exhausted, while binging and relapse. And yet I wasn't consciously aware of the reality that those were the states that I was trying to survive in. It became very obvious why I wasn't able to thrive or to connect in my relationships with God and others. When we experience these emotions, it's interesting as our body is duplicating the neurochemicals that are similar to what we experience when we use drugs like cocaine and heroin. These emotions give us energy. They distract us from situations that we don't want to deal with, and they numb us out. Being in anxiety releases adrenaline, which gives us energy, speeds up the body, and dulls the awareness of pain. In anger, it can be a very powerful anesthetic, dulling our emotional and physical pain. Anger causes an increase in many of our body's neurochemicals like adrenaline, endorphins, and dopamine. It takes us about 2 weeks if we go down the faster scale and we're in those emotions to burn up all of our coping chemicals, which leaves us in a place of exhaustion. Our limbic system kicks in that place because we feel like we can't cope, which is feeling like we can't survive. We go back in our memory to remember what our past coping behaviors were, and that starts to create cravings for relief. Cravings will wear us down over time, and ultimately we end up relapsing if we aren't able to break out of the unconscious pattern. Once the neurochemicals are depleted, we reach exhaustion. When a crisis occurs, we don't have the capacity to deal with it, to cope with it. Our ability to handle life has changed, not necessarily life. We shut down, descend into depression, while our body replenishes our survival neurochemicals. We crash. I found this to be a very interesting insight as well. Each of the steps in the faster scale have two things in common: procrastination and isolation. Procrastination makes problems worse, and isolation eliminates the support and counsel of our spouse, our friends, our family, the church, and our accountability allies who are able to help us see the truth and resolve problems. We're made for a relationship with God and people, and when we lose our ability to bond, to trust, and to attach to other people because of things that have happened in our life, like abuse or neglect, then we can't get our needs met the way that God designed, and we learn how to self-gratify. Michael asserts that all addictions are self-gratification, especially sex addiction. We're designed to get gratification from relationships, and so to recover from self-gratification, we need to get in touch with those needs and have them met through relationships. The key process in recovery is learning to trust again. Not trusting keeps us in isolation, which is the most dynamic feature of our self-destructive behaviors. When we break out of isolation, we can prevent relapse. We can't do recovery alone. It's interesting as well, our limbic system works to prevent us from changing things because it believes that that's not a safe situation. Change feels risky and that causes fear. Regroup provides a safe environment where we are supported as we work through our recovery journey and find healing and replace our coping behaviors with healthy behaviors. We can't do recovery alone. Some of the ways that the faster scale tool helped me in my recovery is that it gave me insights into my pre-relapse feelings and behaviors. It revealed the psychological elements of my addiction and helped me to realize that this was something that was hardwired into me. It wasn't just a spiritual challenge or warfare, and it wasn't just a bad habit. It was actually something that I was using to drive chemicals in my body that gave me adrenaline and energy and allowed me to cope in situations that I felt I couldn't cope with otherwise. It gave insight into how those emotions were connected with the chemicals in my body, and it brought my unconscious behaviors into my awareness. It showed me these patterns and the underlying beliefs and helped me to realize that I could continue to repeat the same cycle into relapse. It also, in my group, provided a framework that allowed me to involve others to support me and to help provide insight and help for me in my in these situations, help to break out of isolation. And it gave a context to what it meant to being in restoration, which is the only way we're able to step out of the faster scale. We can't climb back up it. We have to move out of it and start to undertake our healing and our self-care activities that are in the restoration phase or state. It helped me to develop strategies to step out of the spiral, and it helped me to get to the why of my addiction, ultimately what was driving me in these behaviors. The tool is valuable for anyone who's experiencing unwanted behaviors. My wife has used it as part of her recovery from betrayal, and I continue to use it to provide insight into my feelings and behaviors. I find it especially helpful when I'm asked, "What's going on?" And I feel like the answer is nothing. And if I use the tool, it'll help me to see whether or not I'm moving down the faster scale and I've got some anxiety, or if if I'm forgetting the priorities of what I have said is important for me in my life and my recovery. Some of the scriptures that I believe reinforce the concepts that are in this, that are the basis for this tool. Psalm 23, where God says that he restores my soul. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Romans 12, 1 and 2, this has been an anchor verse for me in my recovery. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. And John 8, 31, 32. So Jesus was saying to those Jews who had believed him, if you continue in my word, then you are truly disciples of mine, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Hopefully this has been a good introduction to a tool that can help with your recovery. I look forward to the conversation, and thank you so much for listening.